My family rejected me for my perfect brother's achievements. Now he's begging me to fix the ruined family business. The doorbell rang at exactly 8:17 p.m. on a rainy Tuesday evening. I wasn't expecting anyone. I never did. When I opened the door, 7 years of carefully constructed indifference nearly crumbled. Liam stood there, his designer suit soaked through, his perfect hair plastered to his forehead. My golden boy brother, the family hero, looking like he'd just lost everything. And maybe he had. "Alex," he said, my name catching in his throat. "I need your help." For words I never thought I'd hear from him. For words that changed everything. But let me rewind. You need to understand what those words meant coming from him. Growing up as Alexandra Morgan meant living in Liam's shadow. He was 3 years older, impossibly charming, and the sole focus of our parents' universe. Morgan Industries was our father's legacy, the shipping empire he'd built from nothing, and Liam was its crown prince from the day he was born. I still remember my 10th birthday. I'd spent weeks dropping hints about the telescope I wanted. I'd even left the catalog open on the kitchen counter with the page dog-eared. When the day came, my father handed me a small, impeccably wrapped box. Inside was a fountain pen. For taking notes at the shareholders' meetings, he explained, his attention already drifting to Liam, who was texting in the corner. "Start learning the business now, and maybe one day you'll assist your brother when he takes over." That was my role in the family. Maybe one day you'll assist. Never lead. Never shine. Just assist. The telescope? My father had forgotten. My mother suggested I could borrow Liam's old one from the attic if I was really interested in that space thing. Liam did get a telescope once. He used it exactly twice before getting bored. I tried so hard to make them notice me. I graduated top of my class while Liam barely scraped by with CS. I won the state mathematics competition 3 years running. I even forced myself to join debate club, fighting through my social anxiety, thinking maybe if I could speak confidently like Liam, they'd finally see me. "That's nice, Alexandra," my mother would say absently before turning to my brother. "Liam, darling, tell us again about that game-winning goal." By 17, I'd stopped trying. I became invisible by choice rather than by neglect. I built walls and retreated behind them, watching my family through one-way glass. Observing, learning, planning. When I left for college, my father's parting words were, "Don't waste our money. Not everyone can be like your brother, but at least get a degree that will be useful to the company." I did get a useful degree. 2, actually. A bachelor's in business and a master's in finance, both with honors. Not that they noticed. The day I graduated, they were all at Liam's apartment, celebrating his promotion to vice president of Morgan Industries, a title our father created specifically for him. I packed my bags that night, changed my phone number, disappeared. They didn't look for me. Not one call. Not one missing person report. Not one private investigator. Nothing. It was as if I'd never existed at all. For the first year, I checked my email daily, waiting for something, an angry demand to come home, a concerned question about my whereabouts. Even a formal disownment would have been something. But there was nothing but silence. On the anniversary of my disappearance, I finally stopped waiting and started living. I moved across the country, took an entry-level job at a tech company on the verge of collapse, worked 80-hour weeks, built something new. Fast forward to today. 7 years of silence. 7 years of building myself from scratch. 7 years of becoming someone they could never have imagined. And now Liam was at my door, rain-soaked and desperate. I stepped back, wordlessly inviting him in. My apartment was modest, deliberately so. This wasn't my real home, just a convenient address for this part of town. I watched him scan the place, taking in the IKEA furniture, the lack of personal photos, the general impression of someone just passing through. "Nice place," he lied, the old Liam peeking through for a moment. "What do you want?" I asked, not offering to take his wet coat, not offering coffee, not playing the role of gracious host. Those niceties were for people who deserved them. He ran a hand through his dripping hair. "Can I sit down?" I nodded toward the couch. "How did you find me?" I asked, remaining standing while he sank onto my sofa, looking smaller than I remembered. "It wasn't easy," he admitted. "You covered your tracks well." I waited, saying nothing, letting the silence stretch uncomfortably. It was a technique I'd learned in business. The person who breaks the silence first usually gives away the advantage. Liam broke first. "The company's in trouble, Alex. Serious trouble. Morgan Industries? Dad's perfect legacy." I couldn't keep the edge from my voice. "Yes." He looked up at me, and I saw something I'd never seen in my brother's eyes before. Fear. "We're about 3 weeks away from complete collapse." I shouldn't have felt anything. I'd severed those ties years ago. Cut them clean. But something twisted in my chest. Not sympathy, but something darker and more complicated. Something that tasted like vindication, but felt like grief. "And you came to me because..." I let the question hang, forcing him to say it out loud. "Because you're the only one who can help us." His voice cracked. "Please, Alex. I know we don't deserve it. I know I don't deserve it. But it's not just about me. It's Mom and Dad, the employees, everyone who depends on the company." I finally sat down, directly across from him, and studied the brother I once knew. The golden veneer had worn thin. There were gray strands in his hair now, lines around his eyes that hadn't been there before. The charming confidence that had opened every door for him was gone, replaced by something raw and unfamiliar. "Tell me what happened," I said, my voice neutral, giving nothing away. As Liam began his tale of corporate disaster, I maintained my calm exterior. But inside, a storm was brewing, a hurricane of conflicting emotions. Because what my desperate brother didn't know, what none of them knew, was exactly who I had become in their absence. And the true power I now held over all their fates. I messed up, Alex. I messed up everything. Liam's confession hung in the air between us. I remained silent, watching him squirm under my steady gaze. 7 years ago, I would have jumped to comfort him, to offer solutions, desperate for even a scrap of his approval. But that girl was gone. "What exactly did you mess up?" I asked finally, my voice cool. He took a deep breath. "Dad retired 3 years ago. Gave me full control." A hollow laugh escaped him. His golden boy, ready to take Morgan Industries to new heights. I knew this already. I'd seen the press release, the glowing profile in Business Weekly featuring a photo of my father clapping Liam on the shoulder, both of them beaming. "Morgan Industries passes the torch," the headline had declared. No mention that there was another Morgan child. I'd stared at that photo for hours, then deleted it from my digital archive of the family I once had. "At first, everything was fine," Liam continued. "I stuck to Dad's playbook. But then..." He hesitated. "But then you decided you knew better." I finished for him. His head snapped up. "How did you?" "Because I know you, Liam. I've always known you, even when you didn't bother to know me." He had the decency to look ashamed. There was this opportunity. The Reynolds Group was selling their maritime shipping division. Dad had always wanted it. They have exclusive contracts with the Asian markets we could never crack. "So you bought it," I stated. "I leveraged everything to buy it," he corrected, running his hands through his hair. "Everything, Alex. The company's assets, the family properties, even Mom's trust fund. The board advised against it, but I..." He trailed off. "But you're Liam Morgan and you're never wrong," I supplied. A muscle in his jaw twitched. The deal went through. I was a hero for about 6 months. Then the shipping industry took a downer. The Asian markets we'd paid so much to access started using local carriers. The Reynolds fleet needed major upgrades we couldn't afford. His voice grew hoarse. And then we discovered Reynolds had falsified their books. Their profit margins were half what they claimed. "You didn't do proper due diligence," I observed. Liam didn't deny it. "The acquisition is bleeding us dry. We're hemorrhaging money. The banks are calling in loans, and our credit rating has tanked. We can't secure new financing." He looked up at me with desperate eyes. "We have less than a month before we default on our loans and lose everything. And what does Dad say about all this?" I couldn't help but ask. Something dark crossed Liam's face. He's in denial. Tells everyone it's a temporary cash flow issue. He and Mom just left for a cruise last week, for God's sake. Said they needed a break from all the negativity. That sounded like them. When reality became uncomfortable, my parents simply rewrote it to suit them. Why come to me? I asked the question that had been burning since I opened the door. Last I checked, I was the family disappointment. The one who lacked vision. The one who wouldn't amount to anything. Liam winced at the familiar phrases. Because I've been following your career, Alex. This caught me off guard. I'd been careful. Very careful. Not at first, he admitted, reading my expression. For the first few years, we all just let you go. He had the grace to look ashamed. But about 3 years ago, I spotted your name in an industry report. You were listed as a key advisor in the Echo Tech turnaround. I kept my face impassive, though my heart rate picked up. Echo Tech had been my first major success, the failing company I'd joined and helped transform. I'd insisted on staying out of the press, but my name had appeared in some internal documents. I started paying attention after that, Liam continued. You kept showing up in the background of major corporate restructurings. Never front and center, always in the shadows, but the pattern was clear. Companies on the brink of disaster would bring you in, and 6 months later, they'd be profitable again. He leaned forward. The industry calls you the ghost. The fixer who appears when all hope is lost, works a miracle, and vanishes again. I stood abruptly, walking to the window to hide my expression. I'd never intended for any connection to be made between Alexandra Morgan and the ghost. That Liam had figured it out was concerning. You've become exactly what Dad said you'd never be, Liam said quietly. A success. A force to be reckoned with. I turned back to him. And now you want that force directed at saving the very family business I was deemed unworthy to touch. Yes. No denials, no excuses. Just raw desperation. How much? I asked. What? How much do you need? Liam swallowed hard. 20 million to stop the immediate bleeding. Another 30 to stabilize and restructure. $50 million. A drop in the bucket of what I could access now, but an astronomical sum to the brother who once mocked my pathetic savings account. And if I decide to help, I said carefully, what would my role be? Hope flickered in his eyes. Whatever you want. Consultant, partner, co-CEO. And what about Dad? Is he willing to have his failure of a daughter bail out his perfect son? Liam's silence was answer enough. He doesn't know you're here, I realized. A laugh escaped me, sharp and without humor. You haven't even told him. I wanted to talk to you first, Liam said defensively. To see if you'd even consider it. The irony was delicious. The golden child, secretly begging the outcast for salvation, too afraid to even tell our father he needed my help. I'll think about it, I said finally. As I ushered him to the door, Liam grabbed my hand. Alex, I'm sorry. For everything. I know it's too little, too late, but I need you to know that. I gently extracted my hand from his grip. You're right about one thing, Liam. It is too late. After he left, I pulled out my phone and made a call. It's me, I said when the line connected. Pull everything we have on Morgan Industries. The Reynolds acquisition, loan agreements, current market position. Everything. Yes, Ms. Morgan, my assistant replied. And shall I prepare the Icarus Protocol? I smiled at the code name we used for my most ruthless corporate takeovers. Yes, I said. I think it's time the Morgan family learned exactly who they cast aside. My real office occupied the entire top floor of the Obsidian Tower, a sleek black skyscraper that dominated the city's skyline. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a 360-degree view of the metropolis I now quietly ruled. Not that anyone knew it was mine. The building belonged to Phoenix Capital, the investment firm I'd built from nothing, which operated through a web of shell companies and proxies. The reports you requested, Ms. Morgan, said Elise, my chief of operations, placing a tablet on my desk. Unlike the modest apartment where I'd met Liam, this space reflected my true status. Minimalist, expensive, powerful. much like the woman I'd become. Thank you, Elise. What's the verdict? She grimaced. Morgan Industries is in far worse shape than publicly reported. The Reynolds acquisition wasn't just a mistake, it was a corporate ending mistake. I scrolled through the financial data, each number confirming what I already suspected. They've been cooking the books. Yes. Shifting assets, delaying vendor payments, overvaluing inventory. Classic desperate measures. Elise hesitated. There's something else you should know. Your father has been telling investors that a major capital injection is imminent. He's been hinting at a mysterious angel investor for weeks. I laughed, the sound sharp in the quiet office. An angel investor? Is that what he's calling me now? He doesn't know it's you. He doesn't even know I'm in the picture. I replied, setting down the tablet. My brother came to me in secret, too ashamed to tell dear old dad that his golden boy needs his disappointment of a daughter to save him. Elise had been with me since the beginning. She knew my story, knew the family that had discarded me like an inconvenient draft of a better idea. And now you own most of their debt, she said, the corner of her mouth lifting in appreciation of the irony. That had been my first move after Liam left. Through various subsidiaries, I'd quietly purchased the majority of Morgan Industries loans from increasingly nervous banks. They'd been happy to offload the toxic debt at a discount. Now, I effectively controlled my family's fate without them even knowing it. What are you planning to do? Elise asked. I stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city below. I haven't decided yet, but that wasn't entirely true. I had been planning this moment for years, though I never expected it to come so perfectly gift-wrapped. After leaving home, I'd been fueled by a single-minded determination to prove my worth. I started at the bottom, taking an entry-level position at Echo Technologies, a once promising tech company circling the drain. Nights, weekends, holidays, I worked when others didn't, saw opportunities others missed. When the CEO finally noticed my analysis showing how to save the company, I was given my first real chance. 6 months later, Echo's stock had tripled. I refused public credit, but the board rewarded me handsomely. I used that money to start Phoenix Capital, focusing on identifying undervalued companies in distress. Buy low, fix what's broken, sell high, a simple strategy executed with ruthless precision. With each success, I became more powerful, yet more invisible. I cultivated anonymity like a rare orchid, understanding that true power thrives in shadow. The business world whispered about the ghost, the mysterious fixer who appeared when all hope was lost, but few had ever seen her face. I never used the Morgan name professionally, never leveraged the family connections that might have given me an easy start. I wanted to succeed or fail entirely on my own merits. And I did. By 30, I controlled assets worth billions. My network extended into every major industry. CEOs, influencers, all took my calls, all owed me favors. I had become more powerful than my father at his peak, more successful than Liam could ever dream of being, all without them ever noticing I was gone. Ms. Morgan, Elise interrupted my thoughts. Your brother is calling again. 3rd time today. I smiled. Let him squirm. Tell him I'm in meetings until tomorrow. And the gala tonight? Several Morgan Industries board members will be there. Perfect, I said, turning from the window. Have the car ready at 8. That evening, I entered the annual Entrepreneurs Charity Gala wearing a black gown that cost more than my first year's salary. The event gathered the city's elite, exactly the crowd that my father had once paraded Liam through, introducing his heir apparent while I stood awkwardly in the background. I spotted them immediately. 3 Morgan Industries board members huddled near the bar, their faces tense with worry. They didn't recognize me. Why would they? The shy, forgettable Alexandra Morgan had been replaced by Alex Phoenix, the enigmatic founder of one of the city's most exclusive investment firms. I approached them with the confidence of someone who belonged. Gentlemen, I said, extending my hand. Alex Phoenix. I believe we have some mutual interests. Their expressions shifted from confusion to interest as recognition dawned, not of me personally, but of my carefully cultivated reputation. Miss Phoenix, said Roland Weber, the board chairman I remembered from childhood dinners at our home. Your reputation precedes you. Good things, I hope, I replied with a smile that revealed nothing. Very good things, he assured me, eyes calculating. In fact, we've been hoping someone like you might take an interest in our current situation. I've been following Morgan Industries with interest, I admitted, accepting a champagne flute from a passing waiter. I understand there are some challenges. The understatement made Weber's eye twitch. Challenges, yes. Though opportunities might be a better word for someone with your expertise. The conversation that followed was a masterclass in desperate men trying to appear in control. They never once suspected they were talking to the daughter of their company's founder. Never once recognized the woman they had dismissed for years. As I left them buzzing with the possibility of salvation, my phone lit up with another call from Liam. I rejected it, a small but satisfying power move. Let him wait. Let all of them wait. Because for the first time in my life, I held all the cards. And I was going to enjoy playing them one by one. 3 days after I met with the board members, I finally agreed to see Liam again. This time, I invited him to a private dining room at Orem, the exclusive restaurant on the 50th floor of my building. He still didn't know I owned the place. He arrived 15 minutes early, pacing nervously when I walked in. The dark circles under his eyes had deepened, his designer suit now looking slightly rumpled. The golden boy was tarnishing before my eyes. Alex, thank God, he said, pulling out my chair with practiced charm that couldn't hide his desperation. I was starting to think you were avoiding me. I replied simply, watching his forced smile falter. I needed time to review Morgan Industries' situation thoroughly. And the hope in his voice was almost painful. I signaled the waiter, who promptly brought us 2 glasses of champagne. Let's order first. The Wagyu here is exceptional. Alex, please. I haven't slept in days. Just tell me if you can help us. I took a deliberate sip of my champagne, savoring the moment. The question isn't whether I can help you, Liam. It's whether I will. His face fell. What does that mean? It means I've seen the books, the real ones, not the fiction you've been presenting to your shareholders. It means I know exactly how bad things are. I set my glass down with precision. And it means I'm asking you the question you never expected to hear from me. Why should I help you? Liam stared at me, genuinely stunned. In his world, people didn't say no to him. They certainly didn't question why they should assist a Morgan. Because we're family, he finally managed, the words sounding hollow even to him. Family, I repeated, tasting the bitterness of the word. When was the last time you called me before showing up at my door, Liam? When was the last time you remembered my birthday? When was the last time you defended me when Dad said I'd never amount to anything? He flinched. I know I've been a terrible brother. This isn't about you being a terrible brother. I cut him off. This is about all of you treating me like I was nothing. Like I was a mistake to be tolerated, not a daughter to be loved or a sister to be valued. The waiter approached, but I waved him away. Do you know what Dad said to me the last time I saw him? I continued, my voice steady despite the emotion churning beneath. He said I lacked the Morgan instinct for success, that I should be grateful for whatever small role I might play supporting you. Liam looked away, unable to meet my eyes. And now here you are, the golden child, the chosen one, begging me, the family disappointment, to save you. I leaned forward. Tell me why I should. I don't know what to say, he stammered, his legendary confidence shattered. The truth would be a good start. He took a deep breath, then met my gaze directly, for perhaps the first time in our lives. You're right. About all of it. We treated you terribly. I treated you terribly. I was so caught up in being Dad's heir that I never saw how unfair it was to you. He ran a hand through his hair, a nervous gesture I remembered from childhood. The truth is, I was always jealous of you. This caught me off guard. Jealous? Of me? You were always smarter than me. Always worked harder. When we were kids, I saw how Dad looked at you when you solved those math problems like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. It scared me. I kept my face impassive, though his words stirred memories I'd long buried. So, I used the only advantage I had, Dad's preference for a son to take over the business. I played into it, made sure you were always sidelined. His voice cracked. It was easier to keep you down than to compete with you fairly. The restaurant around us continued its elegant hum, but for a moment, it was just us, two people finally seeing each other clearly. I don't expect forgiveness, he said quietly. But the company employs thousands of people. People who did nothing wrong, who don't deserve to lose everything because of my mistakes. It was a good point, the only one that could have reached me. I've made my decision, I said after a long pause. His shoulders tensed. I'll help Morgan Industries, but not for you, not for Dad, and certainly not because we're family. I pulled a folder from my bag and slid it across the table. These are my terms. Non-negotiable. Liam opened the folder, his eyes widening as he read. This is, you want controlling interest? A board seat? Dad would never. Dad doesn't have a choice, I cut in. And neither do you. What do you mean? I smiled, finally ready to reveal my hand. While you've been calling me nonstop, I've been busy. Phoenix Capital now owns 62% of Morgan Industries' debt. In plain terms, Liam, I own you. The color drained from his face. That's not possible. The banks wouldn't sell to an unknown entity without telling us. They would if the unknown entity offered them 80 cents on the dollar for loans they feared would be worth nothing next month. I sipped my champagne. As for being unknown, Phoenix Capital isn't exactly anonymous in certain circles. Recognition dawned in his eyes. You're the ghost, among other names. Liam sank back in his chair, the full reality of his situation hitting him. So all this time, while we thought you were struggling, you were building an empire. Ironic, isn't it? His laugh was hollow. Dad always said I had the Morgan business instinct. But it was you. It was always you. The question now is, what happens next? I said, tapping the folder. My offer stands. I'll save the company, but on my terms. And if we refuse? Then I call in the loans next week and Morgan Industries files for bankruptcy before the month is out. I kept my voice neutral, stating facts rather than threats. Liam closed the folder, his hand trembling slightly. I'll need to tell Dad. Yes, you will. And for the first time in your life, Big Brother, you'll have to tell him he's not in control. I stood, placing my napkin on the table. I expect your answer within 48 hours. As I turned to leave, Liam called after me. Alex, wait. What did we do to you? How did we not see what you could become? I paused, looking back at the brother I once would have done anything to please. That's the question you should have asked years ago. It's too late now. I walked out, leaving him with the bill and the weight of his family's future. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the one being left behind. The Morgan family estate sat on 5 manicured acres overlooking the ocean, a monument to my father's success and ego. As my car rolled through the familiar gates, memories flooded back, running through the gardens as a child, hiding in the library to escape family functions, watching from the staircase as my parents hosted lavish parties celebrating Liam's every achievement. I hadn't been here in 7 years. Nothing had changed, except perhaps everything. Edwards, the butler who had served my family since before I was born, opened the door. His eyes widened slightly, the only indication he recognized me. Miss Alexandra, he said, voice steady despite his surprise. Welcome home. Home. The word felt foreign, incorrect. They're waiting in the study, he added, taking my coat. I nodded, smoothing down my tailored suit, armor for the battle ahead. My heels clicked against the marble floor as I made my way through the house, each step echoing with purpose. The study door was open. Inside, my father stood by the window, gripping a tumbler of scotch so tightly his knuckles were white. My mother perched on the edge of a leather chair, her perfect posture betrayed by nervously fidgeting hands. Liam paced behind the massive oak desk that had intimidated me as a child. They all froze when I appeared in the doorway. Alexandra, my mother broke the silence, rising to her feet. Sweetheart, it's been too long. Sweetheart. After 7 years of silence, now I was sweetheart. Has it? I asked coolly. How long exactly? She faltered, glancing at my father, who had yet to speak. Classic Eleanor Morgan, deferring to her husband at the first sign of conflict. You look well, she tried again, attempting to bridge the chasm with small talk. I am well, I confirmed, entering the room but remaining standing. No hugs, no pretense of a happy reunion. My father finally turned from the window. At 68, Richard Morgan still cut an imposing figure, though new lines mapped his face and his hair had gone completely gray. So, he said, his voice gruff, Liam tells me you've acquired some of our debt. Some. He couldn't even acknowledge the full extent of my position. 62%. I corrected. Controlling interest. And now you're what? Holding it over our heads? Blackmailing your own family. There it was, the accusatory tone I remembered so well, as if I were the villain in this story. I laughed, the sound sharp in the tense room. Is that what Liam told you? That I'm blackmailing you? Liam stopped pacing. Dad, that's not what I'm doing, I interrupted, is offering a business solution to a business problem. The same as I would for any other failing company. Failing. My father's face flushed with anger. Morgan Industries is not failing. We're experiencing a temporary setback due to market conditions beyond our control. The denial was breathtaking. Even now, with disaster weeks away, he couldn't admit the truth. Dad, Liam said, his voice strained. You need to listen. Alex has seen the real numbers. The Reynolds acquisition was your responsibility, my father snapped, turning on him. I trusted you to handle it properly. I watched the familiar dynamic unfold. My father's disappointment, Liam's desperate need for approval, my mother's anxious mediation. For a moment, I was 15 again, invisible in the corner of the room while family drama swirled around me. But I wasn't 15 anymore. Enough, I said, my voice quiet but firm. The room fell silent. The blame game is irrelevant. What matters is what happens next. I placed my briefcase on the desk and removed 3 copies of the same document, sliding one to each of them. My offer, I explained. Phoenix Capital will provide the necessary capital to stabilize Morgan Industries and restructure the Reynolds debt. In exchange, I take over as CEO with a controlling interest in the company. My father's face purpled. Absolutely not. I'll die before I hand over my life's work to your daughter? I finished for him. To someone who abandoned this family, he corrected, but we both knew what he meant. My mother finally spoke up, her voice wavering. Alexandra, darling, surely we can work something out. Your father has always believed in your potential. The lie was so blatant, I almost admired her audacity. Has he? I turned to her. When exactly? Was it when he told me I'd never amount to anything? Or when he suggested I might make a decent assistant to Liam someday? She paled, glancing at my father, who had the decency to look away. You know, I continued. After I left, I kept waiting for someone to come looking for me. To call. To send a message. Anything to indicate I mattered. I looked at each of them in turn. No one did. We didn't know where you'd gone, my mother protested weakly. You didn't try to find out, I countered. Let's not rewrite history now that you need something from me. Liam, unusually quiet until now, stepped forward. She's right. We failed her. All of us. My father slammed his glass down. And now she's using that to extort us. No, Dad, Liam said firmly. She's offering to save us when she has every reason to let us sink. The least we can do is acknowledge the truth. The study fell silent again, the ticking of the antique clock on the mantel marking the seconds of this long overdue reckoning. I need your decision by tomorrow, I said finally. The banks won't wait any longer. My father stared at the document, his life's work reduced to legal terms and conditions. And if we refuse? Then Morgan Industries declares bankruptcy next week. The family assets tied to company loans will be liquidated. And the Morgan legacy ends with you. He looked up at me, really seeing me perhaps for the first time. When did you become so hard? I held his gaze steadily. When I had to rebuild myself from the ashes of the daughter you discarded. My mother began to cry softly. Liam looked broken. My father seemed suddenly old, the weight of his mistakes finally catching up to him. I turned to leave, pausing at the door. For what it's worth, I don't want to destroy what you built, but I won't save it at the cost of my self-respect. The choice is yours. As I walked out of the house that had never truly been my home, I felt neither triumph nor regret, only the quiet certainty that, whatever they decided, I had finally claimed my worth. The deadline came and went with no word from my family. No calls, no messages, just silence. Some things never change. I sat in my office at Phoenix Capital, watching the city lights blink on as dusk settled. In 20 minutes, I would instruct my legal team to call in Morgan Industries loans. By this time tomorrow, the company my father built would begin its death spiral. It wasn't what I wanted. Despite everything, I hadn't come this far seeking destruction. But I wouldn't beg them to be saved either. As the minute hand ticked closer to decision time, Elise appeared at my door. "Ms. Morgan, your brother is here. He insists on seeing you." "Interesting. Send him in." Liam entered alone, carrying a manila envelope. Gone was the designer suit, replaced by jeans and a simple button-down. He looked different, humbled, but somehow more substantial. "You missed the deadline," I said, not bothering with pleasantries. "I know." He took a seat across from me uninvited. "But I'm not here about the deadline." "Then why are you here?" He placed the envelope on my desk. "Before you decide to pull the plug on Morgan Industries, there's something you should see." Curious despite myself, I opened it. Inside were documents, the deed to the family estate, ownership certificates for my father's art collection, title to the vacation properties, all signed over to Morgan Industries as collateral. "Dad did this yesterday," Liam explained. "Everything he owns personally is now tied to the company. If it goes down, he loses everything, not just the business, but every remnant of the life he's built." I looked up, understanding dawning. "He's going down with the ship." Liam nodded. In his own stubborn way, he's finally taking responsibility. He won't accept your offer, his pride won't let him, but he won't shelter himself from the consequences either. I sat back, reassessing. This wasn't the father I remembered, the man who always had an escape plan, who never accepted blame. And Mom, she's standing by him, says they built it together. They'll lose it together. Liam shrugged. "First time I've seen them united in years, honestly." "What about you?" I asked. "What do you lose?" His laugh was hollow. "Everything and nothing. My reputation is already shot. My savings went into trying to prop up the company these last few months." He met my eyes directly. "But unlike Dad, I'm not too proud to ask for help. I'm not too proud to admit I was wrong about the business, about you, about everything." I studied my brother, searching for the manipulation, the angle. There wasn't one, just exhaustion and something that looked remarkably like growth. "I have a proposal," he said when I remained silent. "Different from Dad's rejection or your takeover." "I'm listening." "Let the company fail." This caught me off guard. "What?" "Morgan Industries as it exists is beyond saving, not just financially, but culturally. Dad built a business in his image. Arrogant, inflexible, unable to admit mistakes." Liam leaned forward. "But from the ashes, we could build something new. Together." "We." I couldn't keep the skepticism from my voice. "You, me, and whatever team you trust. Your company absorbs the viable parts of Morgan Industries. We restructure completely, with you in control." He spread his hands. "I'll work for you, Alex. No titles, no corner office. I'll start at the bottom and earn my place, just like you did." The irony was delicious, the golden child offering to become the subordinate. And Dad? Mom? They keep enough to live comfortably, but not lavishly. Their choice whether to watch what rises from what they lost. I stood and walked to the window, processing. This wasn't vengeance or capitulation. It was something I hadn't considered. Transformation. "Why should I trust you?" I asked finally. "How do I know this isn't another Morgan manipulation?" Liam joined me at the window. "Because I have nothing left to manipulate with. Because I've seen what you've built while I was busy destroying what I was handed. Because," his voice caught slightly, "because you're my sister, and I've wasted too many years pretending that didn't matter." The city stretched before us, lights twinkling like opportunities. I could destroy my family's legacy with a single call. I could save it on my terms, or I could transform it into something entirely new. "If we do this," I said slowly, "there are conditions." "Name them." "First, I have complete control. No questions, no undermining, no end runs to Dad for support." He nodded. "Agreed." "Second, you start at the bottom. No special treatment, no fast track." "Already offered that." "Third," I turned to face him, "we rebrand completely. New name, new mission, new values. Nothing that carries the weight of the past." "What name?" I smiled, the decision crystallizing. "Phoenix Morgan. Death and rebirth." Liam extended his hand. "To Phoenix Morgan." As I took it, I realized I was choosing neither destruction nor forgiveness, but something more complex. Evolution. The past couldn't be erased, but it could be transformed. 2 weeks later, I stood before the remnants of Morgan Industries' board and the key players from Phoenix Capital. My father sat in the back row, silent but present, his presence both a concession and a passing of the torch. My mother beside him, her expression a mixture of pride and regret that came decades too late. "Morgan Industries is over." I began, my voice steady. "Its time has passed. But from today, Phoenix Morgan rises, a company built not on ego and legacy, but on innovation, integrity, and genuine collaboration." As I outlined the new vision, I caught Liam's eye from where he sat among the junior staff. He gave me a small nod of respect, not the patronizing approval of my childhood, but the genuine acknowledgement of equals. I had 2 choices: take power through destruction or create something new from the broken pieces. I chose creation. For the first time in my life, I wasn't defined by what my family thought of me, whether their dismissal or their belated approval. I defined myself, my future, my legacy. And in that, finally, I won.